Welcome, book nerds. Today I'm interviewing author Samantha Downing about her debut thriller, My Lovely Wife. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Tamara Ford, and thank you for downloading this week's book chat here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. Every week we get bookish with roundtable book discussions, 5-minute shelf bites, interviews, and more. Subscribe on your podcatcher of choice so you don't miss out on any of this book nerd awesomeness. If you'd like to email in feedback or questions, reach out to me at info@shelfaddiction.com or call in and leave an internet voice message via SpeakPipe. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Shelf Addiction. The links for everything related to today's episode, including Samantha's social media, are below in the show notes. If you know someone who may enjoy this episode, please share it with them today. Before we get started, let me tell you a bit about today's interview guest. Samantha Downing lives and works in New Orleans, where she is trying to stay cool in the southern heat and write her next novel. My Lovely Wife is her debut novel and has earned praise from authors Harlan Coben, Liv Constantine, Jane Corey, Nick Petrie, Meg Gardner, and more. I had a fun time interviewing Samantha Downing. She is awesome, and I know you'll enjoy learning about her and her novel. Let's jump into the interview. Hey, Samantha, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. I am super excited to talk about your debut novel, My Lovely Wife. But first, I want to talk a little bit about you. So let's start with what you're reading right now.
Okay. What I'm reading right now is I just finished actually a book called Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney is her last name, which is a crazy psychological thriller. That actually came out last year, and I'm preparing for her new one, which comes out next month, I believe. And then I just got the next book of Liv Constantine. She wrote it's two people, wrote the last Mrs. Parrish, and their next book is called Last Time I Saw You, and I'm looking forward to that. But my favorite book that I've read this year is Looker by Laura Sims, which is crazy. All of these are thrillers, which is obviously my genre.
What makes that your favorite book of the year so far?
It's claustrophobic almost. It's so it almost just feels suffocating. It's a woman who is obsessed with a famous actress that lives across the street, and you're completely in her head, and you don't change to anyone else's perspective. So it feels very very closed in and very psychotic.
Oh goodness. Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's great, and it's not a long novel. It's actually rather short, but you kind of when you end it, you kind of take a deep breath. Whew. Okay.
Like, oh, it's over. Okay, right. I made it.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So, do you think you have any authors that you just auto buy every time a book comes out? You are clicking that buy button without even looking at the description.
Yes, there are a few. Carolyn Kepnes, who wrote You, and I think we've all seen the Netflix show You. I buy everything that she writes. Mary Kubica, another more on psychological thriller. I would say Gillian Flynn, if she wrote more often, if she wrote a book every year, I would buy it every year. But unfortunately, she hasn't graced us with another book since Gone Girl.
Yeah.
Kimberly Bell. The other one, which is totally out of my genre, whom I first encountered because we have the same agent. Her name is Shelley Ellis, and she writes in a couple different genres, but she wrote a romantic novella trilogy set in a dance school, and I love it. I loved it. And they came out at they came out separately. Each novella came out separately, and I was completely addicted to it. It was like the most fabulous soap opera. So Shelley Ellis, she's awesome.
Oh, that's cool. I just love when I read something that's not my usual go-to genre, and I just love it. I love when that happens.
Yes, I love it too. Yeah, I try to read outside of my genre at least every third book or so.
Oh, keep it fresh.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. That also kind of serves as a palate cleanser a little bit. I do that for that too.
Absolutely. And especially with thrillers, sometimes you need to remind yourself the world isn't that dark.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your writing style. Since this is your first novel and you've read a ton of books, do you have any like specific books or authors that you think may have inspired you?
Definitely. I would say the first one is the classic Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. That absolutely inspired me. That is, the character of Rebecca never appears in the book, but the narrator is an unnamed narrator, and she's the second wife of someone whose first wife was named Rebecca, and big shoes to fill. So we constantly are seeing Rebecca only through the stories that people tell about her. So that was a big inspiration in how I designed this book. Another one with an unnamed narrator that people don't think about a lot because of how the story plays out is The Fight Club. That's an unnamed narrator. The only name we ever know is Tyler Durden. So we never actually learn Ed Norton's real name in the movie. So it's interesting. It's a fascinating technique, I think.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that because I was mentioning earlier that I had just, finished your book and I really enjoyed it. But when I finished, I'm like, did I miss what the husband's name was? I'm like, how did I miss it? And I'm like, what's going on? So you kind of use that technique in your book as well.
Absolutely. He is an unnamed narrator, and we see his wife, his lovely wife, only through his eyes. We don't ever get her perspective. And I very much wanted the book to be that. I think that's the way that we know people in general. You never really get into somebody's head. You know them only through your interactions with them. So I wanted you to see his wife that way and make your own opinion about who she is or what she is when you get to the end of the story, and then you can have your own opinion. But you never get her inside of her head in the story. It's just him.
And at first I kind of wondered, I wonder why she chose to go with one POV versus, back and forth. Because, as a reader, I'm like, I wonder, because I had a couple of things floating in my mind. You guys, I'm not going to spoil anything. Don't worry. But I'm like, I think if you had the multiple, POV, that might have kind of given more away. So is that the reason why you kind of decided to just go with only the one?
Yeah, there were a couple reasons. There's a lot of thrillers these days that do have the multiple POV and also the back and forth just between two people. And I didn't feel I had anything new to bring to the table on that. So it would just be more of a repetition of what's already been done. I don't have any new ideas for that. And second, I think being in one person's head keeps the story tight. In terms of how much a reader knows and how much you allow them to know. And in a psychological thriller, that's really important. When you flip perspectives, you have to have the other side of the story almost, and then find a way to build suspense while flipping back and forth. So for me, I prefer to stay in one person's head.
Yeah, well, I think it was excellently done the way you did it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just really enjoyed it. But I would like to ask, when you were planning or, thinking about what you wanted to do for this novel, because obviously you're writing from a man's point of view. Did you, how did you prepare to write from a husband's point of view when clearly you're a woman? So how did that work out for you?
Right. Well, I don't plot and I don't plan, so I just start writing, and my ideas come to me like one at a time. Each chapter gives me the idea for the next chapter, and then at the end, of course, I have to do a lot of revision and make sure it's all cohesive. But I found that I'm not a chess player. I can't plan 200 steps in advance. I'm much better one step at a time, and I get better ideas that way. I can expand the story as I go, and it's more fun for me because that's what's exciting to me is discovering the story. So I didn't really plan. I just sort of started writing.
That is awesome. Cause I'm like, that was a lot of interesting how it all kind of melded back together and things tied up, even though you didn't do any planning for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there is a revision, and luckily I have a great editor who says, make sure this all ties together. Yeah. It's not completely, it doesn't come out that way the first time I write it.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and share like the high level, synopsis of what's going on with this book in case, those that are out there don't know what the book is about. We've already started, but let's go back and tell them what the book is about. So if you wouldn't mind, Samantha.
Sure. I think of this as a thriller about marriage. And it is about a couple who has been married 15 years. They have 2 teenage kids and they get a little bored. And so they spice up their marriage in a very extreme, violent way, basically. And that's what it's about. And they are the people next door. Truly, they live in a gated community, a suburban, upscale country club gated community. They might be people you've met. They might be parents of people your kids go to school with. And I think that's what makes it so that so many people relate to it. I've had people say to me, I love the book, but I don't ever want to live next door to you.
Oh my gosh, right? Anybody like that, you want to side eye your neighbors right now. Like, what is going on over there? Because like for me, I live in like a little cookie cutter,
right? Exactly.
Suburban little, neighborhood. And I'm like, these people, some of them are psychopaths. You just don't know it.
Right. Exactly. That's the beauty of being a psychopath. You have this normalcy that you live under. Otherwise you'd be caught right away, right? You have to pretend you're normal. That's the idea. So
I've got to ask you, did you do a lot of research about, serial killers and psychopaths and therapy and things like that?
I did. And I have over the years seen the same movies, TV shows, books that everybody has. I mean, I think a lot of the serial killer stuff has become common knowledge in terms of the profilers and what they do. And there's been I don't know how many TV shows about profilers and people that track serial killers going all the way back to Silence of the Lambs, which I think first made it very famous. So in terms of that, yeah. And one thing I did not want to do in this book is repeat information that most people already know about serial killers and profiling and things like that. Because if you're a thriller reader, you already know it anyway.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Okay, so I did want to ask a little bit about Millicent. Oh my gosh, I can't say her name.
Millicent?
Thank you. I'm so curious about her because she is completely batty, in my opinion, and she's also very, very smart. So smart. So when you were like developing her, like, did you draw inspiration from anyone you know, or like, how did she come about?
Millicent I look at as an extreme version of today's superwoman, what we used to call a superwoman. I don't know if people still say that word, but the wife, the mother, the career woman, the one who's got everything in control and on top of everything. She's the most extreme version of that. She's an uber control freak. She has lots of rules in the household, and that's not even talking about their extracurricular activities. Just the way she runs the household is, somewhere between the military and a drill sergeant. I don't know what it is, but she has a lot of rules, and it's easier kind of just to go along than to fight her on it. So I think the family, even for teenagers, it's easier just to do it, and then they can get out of the room as quickly as possible.
She's like the scary mom. Like she's gonna make you eat broccoli and nothing else, and you can't leave the house and everything. It's like no,
absolutely. And well, I come from a long line of really independent, strong women. Both of my grandmothers own their own business, in their own businesses. My parents got divorced when I was 3, so I was fundamentally raised by a single woman. But what I do remember, or the story that's been told since I was too young to remember it, is when my mom and dad, they were having a dinner party one night, and my dad, he was kind of a tough guy, and he said, "Oh, honey, everything is perfect except," and then he reeled off I don't know what it was. The butter wasn't soft enough. The rolls weren't hot, whatever it was. And my mom picked up a bowl of pasta and dumped it on his head and walked out.
Good for her. That's what he gets. Like,
Yes,
shut
right.
it. Just eat the food.
That's right. That's right. And she said to this day, she said, if I had done that more often, maybe we wouldn't have gotten divorced.
Oh, no. Oh, my
So-
gosh. That's awesome, though. That's an
So-
awesome story.
It is. It is a great story. And she still says he deserved it. He deserved it. So, yeah, when you come from women like that, you tend to, I think, write strong women. Strong women are the first ones that come to mind, and certainly not ones that are being run by a man.
Yeah. And nobody is running her, literally.
No.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to mention was about her name, Millicent. That comes from, oddly enough, the Brady Bunch. That is, if anybody remembers their Brady Bunch trivia, Millicent. It's the only time I've ever heard the name. Someone told me now it's in Harry Potter, one of the Harry Potter later books, but I'm not familiar with that. Not all of the books anyway, but the only time I've ever heard the name Millicent is she was the first girl Bobby kissed, and she gave him the mumps.
Oh my goodness. I actually remember him getting the mumps from being kissed, but I didn't remember the name of the character.
And she, who it was? It was, she was played by Melissa Sue Anderson, who went on to be in Little House on the Prairie. She played Mary, the sister Mary. I know there's so many layers of trivia there.
Wow. I'll tuck that away for later, just in case it ever, comes up in a trivia game or something.
Totally. So that's where the name Millicent came up, is I just never hear it. It's just, even in books even. So
yeah, it's kind of an old name, kind of. So yeah, for sure. So what did you like least about Millicent?
Probably her violence.
Oh, like she kills people? Yep. Yeah, we hate that.
Yeah, that part where she kills people, and
there's that.
Yeah, and maybe a little torture involved. I don't know. Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was really interested in how multi-layered she was. She had lots of layers. Like, you think one thing and then you think something else, and then you're back to your original thought, and you're like, oh man. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised the husband stayed with her for so long. She's crazy. And that's awesome. I love it. It was so entertaining.
I think he liked it too.
He did like it. He secretly liked it. Not secretly.
No, not secretly. He liked it.
Well, what did you like best about his character?
I think he's interesting because he's trying to do, both of them are, but him especially, because he's the one we hear from. He's trying to do the best. He's trying to be a good father. He's trying to be a good provider. He's trying to be a good husband. He's trying to do all the right things in the story. And I don't know if it gets away from him, or maybe he was never built to do the right things. It's hard to tell with him. But you get the sense that he's really trying. And that, I think, again, is something everybody can relate to, because most people are out there just doing their best they can and trying to do the right thing for the most part. We aren't all hidden Millicents.
Right. Yeah. But, and I think if I try to think what would happen if, something happened and then suddenly my spouse is asking me to do crazy things to spice, keep the spice. I'm like, I feel like, I think I'm calling the police, but
right.
To each his own, he handled that differently.
Right. Exactly. And the one thing I wanted, was very deliberate in the book, was to have these very normal moments in the family and conversations about schedules, about work, about the kids that everybody has had. Everybody's had these, they recognize those conversations either because they've had them or they've heard them or their parents have had them. And then you turn the page and they're doing something horrible. So I wanted that juxtaposition between, oh, I've done this. Whoa, no, I haven't done this.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it more unsettling that you can relate to these people and then very much not relate to these people.
Right. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then whoa. Yeah. That's just crossed the line.
That's not cool.
Yeah, not cool. I mean, and even their kids, Jenna and Rory, they are really interesting characters with a lot going on as well, even though they're, quote unquote, just the kids. They've got a lot that they do in this book.
Yes. I definitely wanted kids that were older instead of toddlers that really have no storyline yet other than, I don't know, throwing a tantrum or something. But I wanted kids that were teenagers and had their own personalities and their own storylines. And really what I wanted to do was show that this terrible thing the parents are doing and they think is a secret and they've sort of put into this little box away from their family, the effects of it actually ripple out, and it ripples out into the family. It ripples out into the community. You can't do something terrible and think it's not going to affect people. Likewise, you can't do something good and think it won't affect people. Your choices in life just have consequences. And I wanted to show that through the kids, that even though they have no idea what their parents are doing, there are consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like early on, and pretty much most of the book, I thought Rory was just so bold. I'm like, this little kid is like, I was waiting for him to turn into a serial killer.
Right.
I'm like he is like his mother. Like, oh my God, that's so scary. And then I start wondering, is this going to mean that there's another book where he's a little serial killer and doing stuff? I don't know.
That's a good idea, but I haven't written one. I didn't think about that. That's funny.
They got the nurture and the nature. They were raised by parents who are crazy, and they have the genes from the parents that are crazy. So what will that mean for them?
Right.
Kind of thing.
And it's funny you say that, because a lot of the things Rory does are modeled after my own brother, who was not exactly like that, but Rory is very sarcastic and he's very clever in a devious way. And my brother was like that too. He would figure stuff out like that if whether just taking advantage of being a teenager kind of a thing, and not that he would kill people, but that's that sort of teenage guy getting away with things sort of thing. So that was sort of what it was modeled after.
Oh, so was Jenna modeled after someone as well, or?
No, she wasn't. She was she was not. She was just their second child, and in a totally different position as a female, and dealing with what happens in the community and becoming afraid, and also wanting to be like her mom. Unfortunately, she had her dad's looks, and she didn't look like her mom, but she wanted to look like her mom. So she had another whole teenage problem going on.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of themes in your book, from the family drama, obviously the serial killer theme, little crazy kids, you have infidelity, and, even mental illness, I think, is in there a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How
did you kind of decide when tackling, which type of mental illness did you want to deal with, with therapy and all of that? I know you said you pants it, but just so people know, like, who have trigger warnings and things like that, like, what can we kind of expect as far as the mental illness thing? Can you give us a little bit?
Right. I think I think that comes about more, about a fear of what's going on in the community and a paranoia type of thing. I'm not sure what to call that as in terms of a mental illness. It's not like a bipolar type of situation or even ADHD, and not anything like that. But it's more a reaction to what's going on and a feeling of being unsafe.
Yeah.
And feeling purely by what's been happening in the news and in their community.
Yeah, in a severe way. It's kind of sad, actually. Like, oh. Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but I love a good audiobook. I really do. So I was so glad to see that it was also released in audiobook at the same time.
Yes.
And did you get to choose the narrator, or how did that work for you?
They sent me a sample of the person they thought was best, and it was the same person that read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. And as soon as I heard his voice, it had a really good resonance to it. And I agreed that was a good person. So I guess you could say I kind of had to say it. They suggested the best person and I agreed.
Okay. So you guys, the narrator is David Pitu. I think that's his last name. And yeah, he's good. I did listen to part of it on audiobook because, I had to get a listen and see what that was about.
Sure.
So absolutely. So what can readers look forward to next from you?
Another thriller. I'm in edits right now, and it's, I can't say too much other than hopefully it's just as entertaining and disturbing as this one. That's really what I try to do with my books. As dark as this sounds, what we're talking about, this is not a bleak book. I don't look at it that way. I think there's a lot of dark humor in it, and there's a lot of social commentary in it, and that's what I try to do. I want to entertain you and maybe make you think and maybe make you feel unsettled and a little disturbed, but these are not dark, depressing books in any way.
No. And I would say mission accomplished to you.
Great.
Because that's how I felt.
Great.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think they pitched it as I think Dexter meets Mr. and Mrs. Smith is how they talk about it. I think of the movies that are like American Beauty, which had a lot of social commentary in an old movie, and even American Psycho, which the movie had so much social commentary in it. So I look at things like that as inspirations.
Okay. So one more question before we slide on into the lightning round. If you were to pick, a couple of actors, if you got an adaptation, do you have a few floating around in your mind that you might like to see?
Well, on the cover of the book and in the description, certainly the fact that she has red hair has been established pretty thoroughly now. So automatically I think of red-haired actresses, Nicole Kidman, Jessica Chastain, Amy Adams. However, it doesn't have to be anybody can dye their hair red. So it doesn't have to be one of those three. I secretly have a fantasy casting of Idris Elba and Kerry Washington. So I think that could be a totally different twist on it. I think anybody could do it as long as they were just really good at playing Psycho.
Oh, yeah, right. Believable Psycho. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, for sure. So is there anything else you'd like to share about My Lovely Wife before we close things out with the lightning round?
No, just that I hope people enjoy it. And I love to hear from people. Hopefully you like it. If you're gonna tell me how much you hate it, I don't know if I want to hear from you, but you can that's okay too, though. You can review it however you want to review it.
Just review it.
Just review it. Yeah, just have fun and don't take it too seriously, for goodness sake.
For sure. Okay, so let's do the lightning round, and I know you know what it is, but I'm gonna run the rules down really quickly for you.
Okay.
So you just answer as many questions as you can. Some are book related, some are not. Some questions are open ended. Others you need to pick one or the other. The only rule that I have is that you must choose. You can't say neither or both.
Okay.
So you ready?
Ready. Let's hit it.
Okay. Physical books or ebooks?
Physical.
What's your go-to coffee order?
Latte.
Tattoos or piercings?
Piercings.
Hero or villain?
Villain.
Physical books or ebooks?
Physical.
Bookstore or library?
Bookstore.
Android or Apple?
Apple.
Where's your favorite place to read?
Outside.
Salt or sweet?
Sweet.
Twizzler or Red Vine?
Red Vine.
If you could pick one superpower, what would it be?
To be invisible.
Cliffhanger or tied in a bow ending?
Cliffhanger.
Windows or Mac?
Mac.
Netflix or Hulu?
Oh, that's so tough.
Time's up.
Thank God.
That's a hard pick, right?
Right, because it depends on what you're watching at the moment. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I have both. A lot of people have both, but...
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. Hard choices. Thankfully, one we don't have to make for real.
Right. Phew, I didn't even have to answer that one.
No.
I should have just jumped in and said Amazon Prime.
Oh, no. Honestly, I would say that's a bad choice, but okay.
Probably, but just to be different.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for doing that, Samantha. It was really fun.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Absolutely. It was good to have you on. So everybody be sure to follow Samantha on social media and pick up a copy of My Lovely Wife. The links for everything are below in the show notes, and I will catch you on the next book chat. Take care, everybody. If you enjoyed today's book chat episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that enjoy all things bookish, including author interviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.